Devin, I'm sorry. Oh.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Devin, for that wonderful introduction. Like she said, we are with BLINC, and this is Make It Your Business, NC-Live Resources for Small Businesses and Entrepreneurships. BLINC is a part of North Carolina Library Association, NCLA section that covers business librarianship. And on our title slide here, I kind of have a picture of some folks laughing and possibly doing some research and collaborating. I think that sums up BLINC in a nutshell. And I'll talk a little bit more about BLINC a little later. We are definitely honored to present this webinar in collaboration with NC Live. Like Devin said, we are big supporters and want to spread the news or the information that NC Live provides, because we really appreciate the resources we get there. And we hope to do this more. So we'll kind of do a little bit of a call to action at the end. So I've kind of introduced the webinar, but now we'll introduce ourselves.
Sorry. So as Devin already said, my name is Hemphill. I am the Business Services Librarian at Durham County Library.
Oh, I forgot the order. Also, I'm the Social Sciences and Business Librarian at UNC-Charlotte. I cover the Belk School of Business and the Psychology and Organizational Programs. I'm also the Vice Chair of BLINC, and I'm actually coming up and finishing my 2 years of service when the NC Live conference happens later this, not NC Live, NCLA's conference at the end of the month.
I'm Shaun Bennett. I'm the Research Librarian for Business and Education at State. So I cover the Poole College of Management and the College of Ed. I'm also one of the directors at large for BLINC. And we're going to move right into our agenda for today. So today, first, Hannah's going to take us through Data Axle and talk about that resource. Then we'll pass it back to Angel to talk more about the Morningstar Investment Research Center. And then I'll take over to talk about those various ProQuest databases, and we'll wrap up with some final thoughts.
So I do want to jump back in and talk a little bit more about BLINC, just so that you can get a sense of who we are and what we do. So we are a community of public, academic, and special librarians, and anyone kind of in that ecosystem and working in that space who value networking, supporting each other, and we have frequent and free workshops. If you want more information, we have our link here, it's nclaonline.org/BLINC. While we do have membership dues administered through NCLA, our workshops, bi-monthly networking groups and one-on-ones, and even our listserv are completely open to anyone who requests. And we are the sponsoring organization of the Entrepreneurship and Libraries Conference, which is a national conference that convenes every other year. They kind of alternate with, or the plan is to alternate every other year, the NCLA's conference. And they held a great workshop earlier this year on supporting cannabis entrepreneurs. And in December, we're actually planning a workshop on inclusive entrepreneurship. Both of those are free. The conference, depending on the year and the support we get, may not be. And if you want to learn more, we have the link here, and it's basically entrelib.org. And then I just want to talk a little bit about the basics of business research. So when you're looking at business information, determine kind of market, industry, sector research, consumer behavior, and company information. This is one of the things that can assist small businesses and entrepreneurs in doing that kind of initial research they might want to do in terms of their business plan, but also may help them in raising funds from investors or the communities, getting the word out there. The main thing that this is really great for is looking at potential competitors and clients. Lastly, one way to conduct business research is to keep up with business news and what professionals are saying in the field about different matters. So in our economy, business impacts us all, right? And keeping up with news is a great way to stay informed. I just would like to say, being in Charlotte, I've seen just how the housing market has made owning a home so hard, and just kind of this recent trend, and I say recent, but it's just made kind of been brought to light a little bit more because it's accelerated. Just how many businesses are buying up homes and building homes only to rent them in our area and not sell. So I'm watching that very closely as a renter who would like to own. So now we're going to talk about how to navigate to the business and management databases on NC Live's website. You can see here on their website at nclive.org, on their homepage, if you click on the Browse All Databases button, on the next page, you would use that left side menu to select Business and Management. That will filter to the list of business databases and the resources, mostly what we'll talk about today. So now Hannah will talk about Data Axle Reference Solutions, which was formerly Reference USA, if you've worked with this service before.
All right, thank you, Angel. So I will be talking about Data Axle Reference Solutions. As Angel said, it was formerly known as Reference USA. It's great for researching businesses, doing some market research, looking into competitors or complementary businesses in the area. And so this is, once you click onto that database, this is the page that you'll see. And I'm mostly going to be talking about the US Business Database, but I'm just going to quickly go over some of the other databases that you see on this page here. And so down near the bottom, you'll see the US Standard White Pages and the US Consumer and Lifestyles Database. And so these two contain individual information instead of business information. The White Pages is pretty self-explanatory. So it's if you have a phone number or address listed, then that's information that you can find there. And then the US Consumer and Lifestyle Database, it has more information because it's based off of consumer data, and that's pulled from like magazine subscriptions, credit cards, and that kind of those sources. And so with this database, there is like the option to search with more sensitive data like age, gender, ethnicity. And I do want to point out that if you are searching with those sensitive criteria, then they don't give you the individual's information. They do put it in a graph so that you get a visual, but you're not able to kind of see more sensitive information. And then there's also the US Historical Businesses Database, which is really interesting to look through. You can find information about the history of a business. You can look at a certain address and see what's historically been at that address and for how long. And so that's just kind of interesting to look into and get some kind of history about like an area or a specific business. And before I move on to the US Business Database, I also want to point out up at the very top, you'll see Webinars and Learning Center. And so if you are interested in learning more about how to use Data Axle, the webinars are really useful. So you can go in there and patrons can use it as well. So if someone comes in asking, you know, like more information, more in-depth tutorials for Data Axle, you can definitely send them that way. And so finally, we're going to talk about the US Business Database, which is useful for pulling business information based on a specific criteria. And so this database, it contains 16 million verified and 48 million unverified businesses that are updated weekly. It also has data on closed businesses. And so on the next slide, you'll see up in the top corner, the quick search, that is what you'll see when you click into the US Business Database. And so this is really great for finding information fast if you know what you're looking for. So a specific company, an executive, that kind of information. The advanced search, which is the second tab up there, is you're able to research businesses based on a variety of criteria, including 6 and NAICS codes, geographical location, employee size, and more. And we'll take a closer look at that on the next slide. And so here you'll see a more detailed view of the advanced search function. So the rest of the quick search, the rest of the criteria that you see here on the right is continued over on the left is continued on the right. I don't know my left or my right, but so you'll see that there's a lot of information that you can search through. You can also update the count of businesses as you add more criteria, and then it defaults to the verified businesses. So they, the data axle reference solutions, they do call businesses and verify their information, but you can include unverified businesses. And this is also where you can include information about closed businesses. And then on the next slide, I did a quick little search to kind of demonstrate the functionality. So here I did a search based off of business type. So you can search keywords in the 6 and NAICS codes. And I also did a geographical search. So when you see over here on the right, an updated count, it went from, a lot to 106. So it's much more manageable. And so as you update the count, or as you add more criteria, you can continue to update that count. And then I selected a map-based search because I just wanted to show you that function. It's very interesting. And so if you see here, it's available under the geography criteria, and you're able to draw an area using as many points as you would like. So you can really define the area you're looking for. It also has options for defining a radius, and you can look around a driving route too. So it lets you put in where you're going, like you would for Google Maps, and defining how far out of that radius or that route you want to go. And then you would click done, and it would go back to the page that we were on before. And then from there, you can go and view the results. Next slide. And so here is a view of the results page. So it gives you the options up at the top for how you want to view these results. So you can download them into an Excel spreadsheet that is capped at 250. So just be mindful when you are exporting data, how many records you actually want to export. If it's more than 250, you'll have to export it a couple of times. You can also look at the data on a heat map, which I've demonstrated in the bottom corner here. You can print, and you can also, a new function is to save the search. And so now you can create a profile, which is a really new function. I haven't played around with it very much, but it is there. Some companies will also include a corporate tree, which you can see the little tree looking thing on the right hand side. And so that can show you the parent company and other locations. And then the details option at the top will also take you into a business profile, which we'll look at on the next slide. And each business includes a profile, which has more information. So all of these quick links here, they might not all be filled out, but there's the possibility that they are. So some of the information includes job openings because Data Axle pulls information from Indeed. Industry profile that includes the 6 and NAICS codes. So if you are looking for something in particular and you find what you're looking for, you can see where else it's been categorized. Demographics, historical data, and also nearby businesses and competitors. And so that is just a quick overview of Data Axle. And I'm going to turn it over to Angel now.
All right, thanks, Hannah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Morningstar Investment Research Center. So this is a service that financial professionals use, and it's provided to libraries on a different platform. So they have a different interface, but this is one of the databases I recommend, especially because this has real world applicability. It's applicable because we have real professionals using that. So I'm going to mute myself because they're making an announcement in the library. course, they waited till my section to make that announcement. Okay, so Morningstar is an independent research company providing information on stocks, mutual funds, and exchange traded funds, ETFs. And they have some analysis and created ratings that Morningstar comes up with based on their workforce. They have research reports, which is what I'm going to show a little bit today, on those stocks, bonds, annuities, and even separately managed accounts. And from what they report, they have over 621,000 investment offerings that they provide analysis on. So on this homepage, you can see there are different topics here that you can explore, and then the quick links. And also, you might be thinking like, how do I use Morningstar with researchers, especially small businesses and entrepreneurs? So here on the next page here, I kind of just want to talk about how to understand market stocks and some of the terms I used in the introduction of Morningstar. Their best feature, or one of their best features that I like to highlight to kind of anyone I'm talking Morningstar about, is their planning and education section. And as a part of that, their investing classroom. So I have a picture here. This has really been kind of enhanced in the last year or so. So there's modules, videos, and assessments help you navigate through beginner and intermediate courses. And this can really enrich your skills promoting the resource, but also you can kind of keep it in your business toolbox that you can share with entrepreneurs who are traversing the world of investing, and if you yourself want to learn more information. So I'm going to talk a little bit further, some more maybe tangible ways that you can use this in connection with entrepreneurs. So company information, when I talked about the basics of business research earlier, I mentioned that company research can be related to gathering information on potential competitors and clients. So Hannah talked a little bit about Data Axle, and we learned about looking at companies, their locations. In that company detail page, you can look at sales and employee size if they have it. And Data Axle is really great about providing private company research, which is hard to come by because they can decide what they disclose for the most part. And they also have obviously public companies in there, but what's hard to come by is the private information. Morningstar provides information obviously on publicly traded companies and looking at their financial health as presented in their stock performance and other things, and especially looking at the different funds that I talked about earlier. And so what I like to relate it to Data Axle is you're looking at Morningstar for analysis, and then Data Axle gives you kind of the raw data and the ability to kind of map those companies based on different criteria. So on this slide, we kind of have a research report with Bank of America on the left. And what you can see is just kind of this general information about stock and other things, trends over time. And then on the right-hand side, one of my favorite portion of Morningstar's analysis is bull say and bear say. So this is for Target. Not every report will have this. I've been finding a little bit lately, but what I like about the bull say, bear say is that this is a great snapshot for large corporations, and to just talk about, and they talk about the different means that analysis of a particular company. Sorry. So there's much more to explore with the reports, but I wanted to show just kind of this basic that analysis or the information that's in the company report. But there is a lot more. If you just pull up a particular company, maybe you've invested in with 401k, but not really actually picking those companies, you might want to just look at it and see what's in here. The next thing I want to talk about is industry information. So they actually have, they cover about 11 major sectors across the mainly United States, but obviously internationally as well. And these sector reports obviously are great market sector industry reports. And what they do is they break down the 11 major sectors into subsectors as well. So even though there's kind of this like large overview, they do break it down as well. They're very robust and updated quarterly. And one thing I'll say about the company reports and the industry reports here is that they have the ability to be downloaded into PDFs, and they're getting even better about doing that as well. So it talks about some industry information you can get in Morningstar, and Shaun is going to talk a little bit more about looking at that in or in other information in ProQuest.
Thanks, Angel. Appreciate it. So I'm going to talk a bit about the ProQuest databases that we get through our NC Live subscription. And just a quick note, more than likely we all already know this, but just in case, Clarivet Analytics did purchase ProQuest for some ridiculous, I think it was $2.3 billion. So right now, I don't think any of us know how that's going to affect things in the future. I'm sure it will in some way. I do feel like for the next few years, we're probably not going to see a ton of movement on this. At least one would hope not. But do keep that in mind, kind of in the back of your head, that this will eventually change. Hopefully for the better. We can hope and be positive, I hope. If I go to the next slide, please. We'll try to stay positive, right? So we get a lot of stuff from ProQuest through NC Live. I'm not going to discuss every single one of these databases. I'm going to stick with the big three that I use mostly, which is the ABI Informed Collection, the Business Market Research Collection, and the Entrepreneurship Database. You'll notice there's a couple more highly specialized business databases on here, like the Asian and European Business Collection, or the Canadian Business and Current Affairs Database. Later in the workflow section, I'll talk about how to incorporate those, but at least for my purposes, I tend to stick with those big three when guiding patrons through these. Others may have opinions on saying like, oh no, you're missing something really important. For me, at least, I'm just going to stick with these three for now. Next slide, please. First is the ABI Informed Collection. And I'll be honest, for a very long time, I specifically avoided this database, and I would tell students to avoid it for the simple reason of that first result there on the screen where it says Microprocessor and GPU Global Market Report 2021. Because that's actually an ad. Many of you have probably run into this already. That's an advertisement for a $10,000 report. It comes through ABI Informed Collection through the wire feeds. NC Live and BLINC worked really hard to get ProQuest to do something about this because, as you can imagine, it's really not a great user experience to have them come in suddenly and say, I found exactly what I need, and then they hit that $10,000 paywall. Fortunately, we now have this little option down there in the bottom left to exclude wire feeds, which is really a fantastic way of just making sure that's completely removed from the results. There's a downside. You're not going to get the wire feeds at all, so there might be something else in there. Anecdotally, it is very rare for me to find anything in the wire feeds that is that much more useful than anywhere else. Others may have different opinions on that. But now that we can tell patrons, like, okay, do your search, but make sure you hit exclude wire feeds, it's actually a really good database. That was really the only thing holding it back, in my opinion. There's a ton of stuff in here. Trade publications, academic journal articles, blog posts, even little newspaper reports. We have the industry report publication titles down there on the slide. These are really great if you need specific industry reports. You can search by publication, put a couple of these in there, and then do your Boolean search for your industry, and you'll get some really solid reports. So ABI Informed Collection with that exclude wire feeds option, I think is a really powerful tool for kind of filling in the gaps that the other more specialized databases might leave. And we'll talk more about that in the workflow section. On our next slide here, we're going to talk a bit about the business market research collection. A lot of folks have heard of the Hoover's company profiles, and I know we have patrons that come in and they say, well, I've heard of something called Hoover's. Can you help me get access to those? The Business Market Research Collection does actually have those. So you can go in and get these Hoover's company profiles. And I know, I apologize for how small it is, but you can kind of get a sense of what's in there. You're going to get financial information, even cash flows down to annual and quarterly levels. You're going to get the competitive landscape for this particular company, and of course, who's running it and their key financials. Of course, all of this is dependent upon if it's public or private. Because if it's public, this will be here. If it's private, And it's just not going to be there. Like Angel kind of mentioned with Morningstar, Morningstar is great even for private company research because they might actually have something in there. Hoover's just isn't going to. It's unfortunate. But if you have a patron who's interested in a public company, you're in luck because there's going to be some really great stuff in here. For myself, I tend to use this when patrons are trying to do a competitive analysis or trying to look at a market, and they're saying, well, who do I compare myself to? What are they doing? And these are mostly big companies, but it's still helpful to see that competitive landscape and see kind of what even those major companies are struggling with. On the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about the Entrepreneurship Database. This one's kind of unique because this has startup plans and video clips, business cases, things that aren't in the ABI Informed collection or in the other one. I've tried a couple different ways of searching in this, but really the best method that I know of at least is to go by document type under the advanced search and tell it you just want the business cases, the business plans, and the case studies. From there, I tend to search by NAICS code. You can see the result down there for 311920. I honestly forget which code that is. I specifically added it in there for this presentation. I can't remember what it was now. You can see some of the results in there. And those are business cases and plans. I have a lot of patrons, students that come in, they say, well, I need to make a business plan and I know the basics, but I need a good example. Thank you, Morgan. Coffee and tea manufacturers. Did you know that off the top of your head? It's amazing. So patrons that come in and they say, well, I need to make a business case. I need to come up with a plan. I know the structure, but I need a good example. The Entrepreneurship Database is a fantastic resource for that. So on the next slide, let's talk a little bit about the workflow around this, because how do you actually use this stuff? So please forgive my sort of terrible diagram at the top. But if you're working with a patron question, we tend to split things in the market or company or industry research. You can go to those specialized databases, and forgive me, I added a couple non-NC Live databases in there just for illustrative purposes. So if you're doing that company research, you're going to bring them into Morningstar. You're going to say, well, here's the company, here's the information on this. But if you don't have quite enough, or if there's gaps in the information, the ProQuest databases excel at filling in those gaps with things like newspaper reports, trade publications. Because I've told patrons, even if you don't have the perfect data, right? If you can't get that $10,000 market report, and I don't think any of us can get those. If you do, let me know. I want to come over there. But even if you can't get those, you can get maybe a sentence in a trade publication or a newspaper that says, well, the market is da, 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 because they probably did pay for that report. And you can use that sentence in your own paper. And also those smaller databases that we talked about in the beginning, you may already be aware of this, but all the ProQuest databases have that change databases link, which is circled in red on our screen. If you click on that, you can include all the business databases in one search from NC Live. So if you're not sure where stuff's going to be and you just don't want to take the chance that you're going to miss out on some good materials, it's great to teach patrons to use that change databases. Just always make sure they know that it'll reset the next time they come in. I've had some frustrations come from that. So I'm going to wrap my section up now, and I believe hand it back to Angel.
Thanks, Shaun. Yes. Ooh. A little slide difficulty there. So the last resource we want to talk about, but again, there's so many more with NC Live, but we feel this was worth mentioning. This is new and I think very wonderful. So they have the Entrepreneurial Mindset Training course. And this is on that business and management page. If you actually look at that list on one of Shaun's slides, that was listed there. This is provided by Eli, which is the Entrepreneurial Learning Initiative. And this is normally a paid training, but NCLI is providing it to us at no cost. When I first started my position, I actually wanted to get that. And I thought, oh man, it's going to be, I wouldn't say it's expensive, but it was definitely something I thought I may have to kind of advocate for in the future. So I'm so glad NC Live's providing this. So this is an online self-paced course to help you recognize opportunities that you kind of might overlook and just, again, maybe create more information for you in terms of what the entrepreneurial mindset is about. And even if people are looking to start a business, if you're kind of looking at a patron and they're just trying to decide if starting a business is the right thing, you might want to say, okay, so maybe getting into the entrepreneurial mindset first. But I mean, the entrepreneurial mindset isn't necessarily for people who are just going into small business and being entrepreneurs. This is really great even for librarians. I always say that librarians should have an entrepreneurial spirit about them. Trying to have ownership of what they're doing, autonomy, but also making sure that we're looking at critical thinking and other ways to approach certain topics so that when you're promoting yourself or your services, they are in a way that you feel like you can communicate that value. So this course, again, while it has entrepreneurial in the title, is really good just as a personal way to connect with different skills. And then again, you can suggest this to your patrons as well. So we want to end here, and this is our kind of call to action and our questions we want to relate to you. So what other topics should we explore in a future webinar? We want to continue this wonderful, great collaboration with NC Live. And was there any resource that we mentioned today that you would like to review further? Is there anything else that you see maybe on a particular topic and not just a resource? So we again are Hannah, Angel, Shaun, and if you have any questions, this is going to be the discussion portion of the webinar, and we are a pretty, not small, but relatively small group. So I would say feel free to type in the chat or unmute yourself if you have any questions. And we just want to say thank you for attending today. And if you have questions about BLINC, definitely feel free to email me so we can get you on our listserv and you can learn more about our free workshops and other happenings we have going on. So thank you, everyone. Any questions?
Thanks so much, Angel, Hannah, and Shaun. Folks, if you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the chat or mute yourself.
Thanks, Patricia, for coming. Morgan. Morgan is also one of our great, well, actually, you started off as a director at large, and then we made you an officer for BLINC, didn't we? But we are so amazing because of our network of librarians, and obviously, in part, the resources we have through NC Live, right? I know for my library, we really appreciate that because it allows us to be able to afford other things that we feel like are campus specific, right? And when I was at the public library, that was really great because we were able to supplement the things that we had there with the NC Live resources. So we're amazing because of the people, the resources, and we like to have fun. I put that picture of people laughing because hopefully people will, if you don't walk away with some database information, you will probably walk away with a joke or two about data sets or something else. We love that librarian humor. So
BLINC is the most fun I've ever had in a professional organization. I will say that. And I'll echo what Angel said, even for major library systems like NC State, NC Live allows us to afford other things, and it gives, I'd almost call it a safety net for entrepreneurial students here at State who can say, well, okay, when I graduate, at least I'll keep access to all this amazing stuff through NC Live, so I can have this and use it as a member of the community and continue the entrepreneurial research. The look of relief the students get when I tell them you're not going to lose access, it's gratifying to see, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point because that access gets carried through, their adult life. There's a way that they can create a small business plan using NC Live resources, 10 years after they graduate from a particular community college or four-year college in North Carolina. And it really does kind of create a community because of that, having that resources available. folks, are there any topics that you would like to explore with BLINC in a future webinar? Any questions that came up about business reference that you were overwhelmed by in the last year? Feel free to send those in the chat or include them in the follow-up survey that I'll be sending out later today.
And one thing I wanted to note too here is that one of the first things I learned when I started working with business reference at the public library is that you may have patrons coming in trying to really decide how to get started. And I love, we had a nonprofit librarian and a business reference librarian that were really great and kind of complemented and obviously knew the same information. But I love the idea of, giving them resources that could help them decide, do I want to start a nonprofit? Do I want to start a business? What does a business plan look like? What should I include? And then like Shaun shared in his workflow, you can kind of go from there about filling in the gaps because, that passion, that drive they have for whatever product or service or need they feel that the community has, they definitely might need to look a little bit more at the technical aspects of starting that. And then if they've already started their small business or nonprofit, usually if they're coming into the public library, they're looking for something, and just knowing in general what's in these databases can help you, because even if you can't help them navigate and show them every little piece of it, you can at least point them in the right direction and then maybe connect with a local partner that can maybe go into detail. So we have SCORE, and I know a lot of major cities have SCORE, which are retired business professionals who can actually provide a mentor through that. And then that's my plug to even connect with your next door neighbor. So if you feel like you're in a rural community and you might need a little bit more help, you're one of few people who handle business reference or anything in that realm, reach out to your neighboring county, reach out to BLINC. We would love to help you. We're all about sharing whatever knowledge we use on a daily basis with our patrons. So I want to encourage people, don't feel like you need to know it all, but we wanted to kind of touch on some things here so you can at least know when to refer them to certain databases, and that you have the access to these databases through NC Live. We want to see the databases be used so that we know, what are the needs in our community. So probably just said a lot, but I just hope everyone knows that, we value and love networking, and we want to encourage you to do that as well, depending on what you feel that you may need in your libraries and in your life. I mean, that Morningstar can really help you get started if you're thinking about investing, because it can be really confusing. So we do have this trusted source that can maybe set you on a path to just getting some general knowledge. So I answered someone's question that wasn't asked.
Yeah, thank you so much, Angel. That's a really good point. And I didn't know about SCORE, so I always learn something new in a BLINC related event. If we don't have any questions, we'll end early.